Have a day today, dog. Offense, great drive.
Go, go!
Up!
1, 2, 3, good.
Welcome into practice today, presented by SiriusXM. Ethan Greenberg, Eric Allen, here on the patio here at One Jets Drive. The Jets preparing for Week 17, hosting the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. First of all, I know it's a new year around the corner, EA, but it's pretty nice considering it's almost January 2022.
It's nice for you. You got that big parka on. I'm a little bit cold out here, but yeah, not too bad of conditions for the Jets as they get prepared for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on Sunday after what was a really wild week last week that culminated with a great win over the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Right, and COVID has been the main storyline here. If you talk about last week, I mean, the headline, Ron Middleton served as coach for the New York Jets. Robert Saleh, of course, chimed in the locker room via Microsoft Teams, but now he's back on the field. He spoke to the media a couple hours ago, EA. He said that he's cleared protocols. The change in protocol has allowed him to step back in the building.
You know he's chomping at the bit to be back out here on the practice field. Everything for him was virtual up until game day, and he talked to Cleveland Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski last week about, hey, how is it going to be? And he told him everything's going to be fine virtually throughout the week. Nothing changes, but Sunday you're going to have some misery. Saleh did have some misery on Sunday, but had an opportunity to celebrate with his team after the game. I thought it was interesting. I don't know what you thought about this, that he's actually FaceTiming Green Bay Packers head coach Matt LaFleur, the brother of Jets offensive coordinator Mike LaFleur, of course, during a moment of the game, which was one of the highlights for the Jets. They had a ton of highlights on Sunday, but how about that fourth down play from Zach Wilson, a pass to Connor McDermott? Nobody had that in their pool.
Right, and what EA's referencing is that Matt LaFleur's feed, whatever he was watching, a couple seconds ahead of Coach Saleh's. First of all, we got to get Saleh some help in terms of his feed. Second of all, so, of course, when you see
Do you
a big
really
man
think it was
score,
5 seconds? He said 5 seconds ahead.
It probably felt like 5. It was probably more like 3. But I do know that, if you don't have cable, I'm not saying he doesn't, but I've been communicating with my friends in the past where I've played the spoiler because I've been watching the game and my feed's been a couple seconds ahead and they were not too happy with me.
That's when I shut it down. The text exchanges or like the phone calls where we're watching the game. My dad and I.
Twitter.
No, yeah, you got to totally tune out there. But yeah, Saleh's pumped to be back out there with the fellas. Great job by Riverboat Ron Middleton last week against Jacksonville. Of course, the Jets going for it on fourth down 5 times, converting 3 times, including that touchdown from Zach Wilson to Connor McDermott. And McDermott's going to want the ball more this week.
Behind Coach Saleh there, you see Hamza Nasruddin, number 45. He was one of the many players that were activated off of the COVID list. And remember that last week the Jets had a lot of players go down. This week they got some back. I mean, namely Michael Carter II, Foley Fatukasi, Jonathan Marshall. I mentioned Hamza Nasruddin. And then how about 3 practice squad guys? Then the Jets add a couple players, a linebacker to the active roster, and then Josh Perkins, a tight end. Because tight end right now, EA, is one of those positions that's a little bare, but the Jets now have Perkins, and they get back Kenny Yeboah. Both of those guys might have to play a key role on Sunday.
Yeah, and that would be an opportunity for Yeboah, the rookie, who excelled in that last preseason game against the Philadelphia Eagles, of course. But as we look behind us right now, that's great news for the Jets overall here, that they are getting some players back, because you think about how many players were in health and safety protocols last week. It was darn near 20 at a certain point. And then in addition, you got Saleh, quarterbacks coach Rob Calabrese. They were all in health and safety protocols. So you're starting to get some good news on the health front. I'm looking at the receiver position, though.
Mm-hmm.
Jameson Crowder, he's not going to practice today. The Jets are hoping they can get him back on Sunday. He's dealing with the calf. And Elijah Moore, the rookie, the dynamic playmaker right now. Saleh said 50-50 for this week. He could come off the COVID list, but he has to clear some hurdles with the quad.
Yeah, and when you get placed on injured reserve like Elijah Moore was, you have to sit out for a minimum of 3 games. He's done that so far. Now he has 2 hurdles to clear in terms of being activated off of the reserve COVID list and then being activated off of injured reserve. But how about talk about the receiver position? How about this guy on your screen right now, number 10, Braxton Berrios, doing a great job filling in for both of those guys last week. Not only that, he's also your AFC Special Teams Player of the Week. No doubt about it. 102-yard kickoff return, leads the NFL in kickoff return average, second in punt return average among players who have at least 15 returns. I mean, Braxton Berrios has done a great job throughout his tenure with the Jets, but it really feels like, and I'm curious your take on this, feels like he's developed from a reliable player to more of a weapon for the Jets.
Yeah, he's a multi-purpose threat. Here's a guy who has 4 games now this season with more than 150 all-purpose yards. You thought it was just a matter of time before he took one to the house. 102 yards last week against Jacksonville. And the Jets are going to need special performances from guys like Braxton Berrios in order to stay in this game against the Buccaneers this week, because against Tampa, still, despite the injuries, still one of the most talented teams in the National Football League. The Jets have to be going in all 3 phases. But I like what you said about Berrios. He can be used in so many different ways. The end arounds, he's become a key receiver for this team. How about the catches in key situations last week against Jacksonville and gotta have it situation?
Another Berrios play that I just want to point out is one that I think maybe we don't think about too frequently against the Bengals when Mike White was under center, that little toe tap in the front of the end zone.
One of the best catches of the year.
Yeah, and he also had another toe tap from Zach Wilson. I don't remember what game it was. It was either the Patriots game or the Titans game, where it was down the sideline and he managed to keep both feet in bounds. I just think that he's done a really nice job filling in for the Jets when they've been down players. And how about another guy right there, number 32, Michael Carter. Talk about the Bucs before. I know last week how well Michael Carter ran, 118 yards on the ground. That's a career high. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers front 7, particularly its rush defense, top 3 in the NFL. It's a totally different animal.
Yeah, and they're especially strong in the middle with Vita Vea and Ndamukong Suh. He's so good that I had to stumble through that, because that's tough, really, creating lanes in there in the middle. Nobody really runs on the Bucs, and that helps set up their pass rush, because they're second in the National Football League with 44 sacks. Todd Bowles, former Jets head coach, he can get really creative with his blitzes, because Tampa Bay, as well as anybody in the NFL, they make you play one-handed.
And especially with this Jets offensive line, that's where my eyes are going to be, because last week the Jets started Dan Feeney at left guard, Greg Van Roten at right guard. GVR started the first 9 games of the year for the Jets at that spot, and now this week you would imagine Feeney's going to go to center because Connor McGovern was placed on injured reserve. But Elijah Vera-Tucker and Laurent Duvernay-Tardif both still on the reserve COVID list, so the Jets might have some more challenges up front against a very good front 7 that will be minus Shaq Barrett.
Yeah, shout out to the offensive line, because the 273 rush yards, you mentioned Carter, how productive he was, but the 273 last week was the best number in the National Football League this season. The Jets were averaging more than 7 yards a pop, so they controlled the line of scrimmage. But you're right, you're doing a lot of juggling up front. You would anticipate Feeney, who came in for McGovern, or shifted over, I should say, would start at center this week. Hopefully, with the new protocols, you have an opportunity to get the guys with the initials up front there, AVT and LDT, both back
and
this
GVR.
week. Right. Yeah. So we'll have to see. We'll have to monitor that throughout the week.
Taking a look at Dan Feeney right there. I think maybe it goes overlooked, but Dan Feeney started, or he took every single snap for the LA Chargers in 2018 and 2020. He played 98% of the snaps in between in 2019. He's been a reliable player in terms of availability for the Chargers. He comes here, and when the Jets signed him, I think the narrative was he's a very reliable backup option, swing guard, and has center flexibility as well, and we're seeing that put to the test here late in the 2021 season.
Yeah, and let's give a shout out here to Connor McGovern, because he had a tremendous season for the Jets, and up until going down with the knee injury on Sunday, I believe he had started 56 consecutive games, and he had his best season here in 2021 with the New York Jets. So A very strong play from McGovern this season, but you mentioned Feeney about his versatility. He started out as a guard with the Chargers after leaving Indiana. But last year with the Chargers, he actually started 16 games at the center position, and he'll be able to benefit this week from the reps he gets with Zach Wilson in practice.
Right before, we were taking a look at Connor McDermott, the man of the hour.
Yeah.
The soft hands. I was impressed. That was an athletic catch from McDermott.
It was a hell of a catch. It's funny. Zach Wilson said after the game that's one of the highlights of his life so far. And then he did clarify, said highlights of me playing football at any level. So I thought that was really cool. And, anytime a big guy gets his hands on the football and scores a touchdown, the team really relishes in that.
You were talking about shout-outs before. I feel like we should shout out offensive line coach and run game coordinator John Benton. I don't know about you, but it feels like over the past couple of weeks, the Jets have been moving sideline to sideline very well, even though the numbers, let's say, in Miami didn't show it. They sure showed it this past weekend, but it feels like as a unit, everybody's moving together as one, which is what you want to see in this offense in particular.
Yeah, and they got some push against Miami. I'm glad you mentioned that. They were averaging more than 4 yards a carry against the Dolphins. And speaking of Miami, we actually talked to Dan Feeney on the podcast this week, and he compared what the Buccaneers do to what the Dolphins do with their blitz packages. Miami's blitz happy, and they lead the National Football League in sacks. Oh, by the way, the Buccaneers are sitting right there. Again, this will be a huge test for an offensive line that is shuffling some pieces, but you're right. John Benton has done a very good job, and throughout the offseason, Mike LaFleur said this offense is predicated on getting it moving in the run game. Well, you're seeing a lot of guys, including Michael Carter, Tevin Coleman, and how about Zach Wilson producing on the ground?
91 yards on the ground, the most rushing yards by a Jets quarterback in franchise history. The 52-yard touchdown, the longest run, touchdown or not, in franchise history by a quarterback. And we'll talk about Zach Wilson here in a minute, but let's shift focus to the defensive line. We saw earlier that the Jets are expected to get some guys back in the fold, like Falorenzo Fatukasi, and this Bucs offensive line, extremely stout. Least amount of sacks in the league, 3 Pro Bowlers out of 5 offensive linemen, and of course, when you have Tom Brady under center, he gets the ball out of his hands so quickly that this defensive line, and again, could be without Quinnen Williams. We'll see what his status is. I mean, that's going to be a key matchup here for the Jets.
Brady doesn't like pressure up the interior, but it's funny when people say that. No quarterback wants pressure up the interior. Quinnen Williams would be a key piece. If you're down him, that would be a tough blow. But Sheldon Rankins is not practicing today. I think they're just giving him some veteran rest with the knee injury. He's a guy who's played very well. Falorenzo Fatukasi can help out against that Buccaneers run game because they try to keep some balance there, even though Leonard Fournette on injured reserve last week. Keyshawn Vaughn got a long one going, and they do have Ronald Jones out of the backfield. So the Buccaneers, if you look at their numbers last week against Carolina, even without Fournette, they favor balance. They're going to run the football, and then Brady's going to put it up. His number one target right now is Antonio Brown.
That's right. His first game back in action, 10 catches, over 100 yards. And, of course, Rob Gronkowski, no stranger to the Jets. He has 9 touchdowns against the green and white in 15 games. Right there, number 94, sight for sore eyes, one of the best run stuffers in the NFL. That'll be a big boost against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Whether they run the ball a lot or not, to your point, they do like balance. But how about Zach Wilson? I feel like the discrepancy in age here is something that we have to talk about. Tom Brady, 44 years old. Zach Wilson, 22 years old. How about this? Both share the same birthday, obviously just different years. And this Sunday, EA, will be the largest age gap between 2 starting quarterbacks since the NFL started tracking this stat in 1950.
Well, we've never seen a guy like Tom Brady before.
Unicorn.
He leads the NFL in passing yardage and touchdown passes at 44. Now, they have a ton of weapons down there, but Mike Evans, we're going to have to see what his status is because he had the hamstring. Now he's on the COVID reserve list. Chris Godwin is out for the rest of the season. We mentioned Fournette before, but he is ageless. He is timeless. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, you got to be happy if you're a Jets fan what you're getting out of Zach Wilson. Since he's come back from the PCL sprain, the numbers that I am most encouraged about: 7 total touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 1 strip sack against the Miami Dolphins where the ball was a turnover. But he's only had 1 strip sack this season. He's protecting the football. 103 straight pass attempts without an interception.
And I feel like maybe the numbers don't do Zach Wilson justice last week in terms of moving the ball through the air. I mean, you take a look there. If you were to read the box score without looking at the game, you're thinking, oh, Zach didn't have a great game. But it does feel like, and it does feel like watching the game, that he was more comfortable in the offense than we've seen him in a long time. Felt like he was in control for all 4 quarters.
He's getting better in the pocket. Yeah, you mentioned the numbers. You would say the past numbers were pedestrian because it was a little over 100 yards, right? And then you see the 91 yards on the ground. But he made some key passes at key moments, and I think about one to Braxton Berrios late in the game where the Jets had to convert, and he made it happen. You just sense he's seeing things better, seeing things more clear. And the other thing that the Jets love about him is that he does have the athleticism to make plays, and you're starting to see that. He's operating within the confines of the system, but when he has open field in front of him, he's using his feet now.
Right, and what do you want to see from Zach Wilson against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? We talked about their defensive front. We talked about they won't have Shaq Barrett, who's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. Yeah. But with that being said, what do you want to see from the Jets rookie quarterback with only 2 games left to go?
Buccaneers had 7 sacks of Panthers quarterbacks last week, 11 quarterback hits. And then after Tampa, of course, the Jets will go in and face the Buffalo Bills. But starting with this week, I think you just got to be very clean with your reads. Everybody talks about the pre-snap recognition, but it's also the post-snap recognition and knowing where your hots are, getting rid of the football and protecting it against the Buccaneers because you know they are coming. That is going to happen. And it would really help him, I think, if the Jets get off to a good early start, and we've seen that more recently. That was something earlier in the season that we kept on talking about, kept on harping that the Jets weren't making things happen in the first quarter. Well, the offense is starting to move the football a lot earlier in games, and that's helped them settle in.
I definitely agree with that. I also think it's important. Moving the football doesn't necessarily mean putting up points. If you start to get a little momentum, keep moving the chains, maybe you flip the field with a nice punt, just something to keep an eye on. And for Zach Wilson, it'll, of course, help him if Jamison Crowder and or Elijah Moore are back in the lineup. Those guys not practicing today, Jamison Crowder and Elijah Moore right now, 50-50 to play on Sunday. And let's flip back to the defensive side of the ball here, EA. We talked at the top of the show about all the different injuries, but more so guys who went down because of the COVID list. How about the safety position? Obviously, the 2 guards were impacted, but at safety, the Jets started Jason Pinnock, a rookie 5th-round pick who was selected to be a cornerback, and Will Parks, who joined the team last Tuesday.
Both those guys had 4 tackles against Jacksonville. And how about Pinnock? For not only the 4 tackles, but he forced a fumble that Jacksonville did recover in the end zone for a touchdown. And he also had a PD on a Trevor Lawrence long pass intended for Marvin Jones. I thought for a guy making his first NFL start after playing cornerback at Pittsburgh, he did very well. He does have a good body type for the position. And you got to credit the coaching staff for not only what Pinnock did, but what you just mentioned there in Will Parks. Yes, he's a veteran. He's been with a number of clubs in the past, but just coming in basically off the street, having a couple of practices and going out there, those guys perform admirably.
And also, just to note, Ashton Davis, Sherrod Niesman, the 2 guys that were on the reserve COVID list, still on the list. They have yet to be activated. We'll monitor that as the week goes on. Right there, number 39, Will Parks. And the Jets did get some good injury news. Elijah Riley expected to be a full participant after going down in Miami with a scary concussion. So, seems like if Niesman and Davis end up not being activated off of the reserve COVID list, at least they have Elijah Riley back in the lineup.
Yeah, and that's a feel-good story because anytime you see the stretcher out and a guy carted out of the stadium, you automatically think the worst. Ended up being a concussion, neck injury, and he's back out there on the practice field and expected to play Sunday, so great news for the Jets.
The Jets also have Kai Nakua, who they signed last week as well, in addition to Will Parks. And Nakua is a guy that has experience with the San Francisco 49ers and Robert Saleh, so he's familiar with this defense. But in terms of Jason Pinnock, EA, what did you make in particular? I know you laid out the numbers there, but what did you make of the way that he played, considering he was drafted to be a corner? Not really a whole lot of room there, Robert Saleh said. And then they said, oh, maybe this guy would fit nicely in what we did in San Francisco with Jimmy Ward.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Everybody talks about position flexibility with players, right? And we don't often see rookie cornerbacks make the change to safety so early, but he's a big-bodied player. And the other thing that's happened here with the Jets this season, the development of the other rookies, whether it be Brandon Eccles on the outside or Bryce Hall is one of the leaders in the National Football League in PDs. Jets are very high on Michael Carter II. So if you look at this beyond 2021, it's where do your players fit the best? And for the Jets, this might not just be a short-term thing. Jason Pinnock might be a safety in 2022 and beyond. I was encouraged by what he came out and did in that first game, and I think he's a physical player. He's got some good instincts on him.
And we saw that in training camp. Remember, it was like the second day of camp, he came down with an interception, and we'll see what happens as his career progresses, as these next two games progresses, who actually starts at safety to close out the season. Definitely something to monitor. But before we wrap up practice today, presented by SiriusXM, on a non-football related note, obviously the new year coming in, Friday night, Saturday morning. You have any New Year's resolutions here?
I haven't made mine yet.
Neither have I. Maybe this will be a Week 18 practice today special.
Hey, but you know what? I was thinking about this the other day. The Jets keep on harping about December football. How about some January football? Because the Bucs here, it's going to be what, January 2nd?
Yep.
And then the Jets finish the season January 9th. Going to be a great experience for these young players to take on the defending Super Bowl champion, a Buccaneers team that is playing for seeding right now. They already have clinched the NFC South, but they're looking at home field advantage. Maybe they can get in the 2 spot. They still have an opportunity to get to the 1 if LaFleur and the Packers trip up down the stretch. I don't think they will. I think that the road to the Super Bowl is going through Green Bay.
Yeah.
But I think we're going to see an NFC title rematch between the Buccaneers.
Lambeau? I'd love that.
Yeah, I really do.
That'd be a great storyline, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would be. And then the Jets will have the opportunity down the stretch to play the Buffalo Bills. And how about the AFC East right now? You got 3 teams who, if the season ended today, would be in the playoffs.
It's amazing that, one, that is true. 2, the streaks or the runs that the Patriots and the Dolphins have put together separately. Miami's the only team to have a 7-game losing streak and a 7-game winning streak in the same season. It's just remarkable what they're doing. And I want to wrap up with this. You talked about December football, the importance of it. The Dolphins, the Jets played them in December. They were obviously fighting for a playoff spot. Then you talk about the Buccaneers this Sunday fighting for seeding. The Bills, we'll see what the case is next week. I would assume that they'll be fighting for seeding and a playoff spot as well. The only team that wasn't was the Jacksonville Jaguars, but still a valuable lesson in terms of going down to the wire and closing out a game. Saleh always talks about, first you got to learn how to not lose, then you got to learn how to win, and the Jets did that this past Sunday.
Yeah, and they overcame adversity, and they hung together, and that's what this organization is all about right now, is setting up a culture. And I think you found out a lot about the Jets' DNA last week. People at home will say, well, Jacksonville stinks. Yeah, Jacksonville's a team in transition, and they got a lot of problems right now. But you're talking about a Jets team that had 20 players and their head coach in health and safety protocols, and they were still able to overcome that, playing backups all over the place, and your young quarterback continues to progress, and that's what you're excited about. Saleh did talk today. It's going to be a cool little trio when we have the opportunity to see Zach Wilson, Elijah Moore, and Michael Carter out there on the field together. Whether that happens this week remains to be seen.
That's how we're going to end the 2021 slate of practice today, presented by SiriusXM. Of course, we'll be back next week. It'll be 2022, however. But that's all we have here from the Atlantic Health Jets Training Center, and that's all we have on this show of Practice Today, presented by SiriusXM. And we will see you Sunday.